Snow sifted down through the pale dusk above the trident, settling on tents, on bridles, on half-mended banners that drooped exhausted in the windless cold. In the king's pavilion the braziers gave off a coppery glow, but the warmth never seemed to reach the center, where Robb Stark stood over a broad campaign map stained with candle drips and the rubbings of charcoal fingers. The river crossings were marked in wolf-head pins, the twins in a pair of silver discs, Harrenhal, bleak and black, in a shard of onyx. One pin alone had the shape of a flayed man, and it glinted crimson in the lamplight wherever Robb's gaze alighted on it. The young wolf was leaner than he had been at the Whispering Woods, hardened by marching and grief, by the empty place where Talisa's laughter used to be, and by the cold Southron nights that smelled of damp reeds. Gray wind slept at his master's heels, a restless sleep in which the direwolf's paws twitched now and again, as though he chased something horrible only he could scent. "Your Grace," said Great John Umber, ducking through the tent flap and shaking snow from his cloak. "Scouts report the Manderley column 4 leagues off. They'll be here by dawn." "Good." Robb's voice was quiet. Too quiet, the Great John thought, for news that loyal men drew near. The young wolf traced a path from the Mummersford to Oldstones with a mailed finger. "We join with Lord Wyman's strength. We have near 20,000 spears. Enough to force the crossing at the Twins, if Walder Frye gives trouble." The Great John harumphed. "Old Lord Walder was nursin' trouble in his teat since he were born. Best you sweeten him, lad, or break him quick and be done." "Sweeten him I shall," Robb said, but the words tasted like ash. He thought of the letter Caitlin had penned to Walder Frye on his behalf, promising honors, apologies, even an audience for disgruntled grandsons. His mother did it for love of him, and for love of her house, yet every vow he laid down these days felt as though chains hammered bright on the tradition in Ville. A long, slow ringing, final and inescapable. Great John Umber noted the tightness in the king's shoulders and refrained from further counsel. He was many things, drunkard, braggart, brawler, but he was not blind. Instead he said, "There's others wish words with you. Meege Mormont, Galbart Glover, Lord Karstark's eldest." The Great John spoke the last name warily. Rickard Karstark's ghost walked Robb's camp more boldly than any living Karstark soldier. Robb nodded, motioning Great John aside, but before the tent flap could fall Lord Roose Bolton glided in, pale as winter fog. His cloak was white fox over armor of dusk blue scales. His eyes were chips of smoky quartz. Even the candlelight skirted him, as though reluctant to touch. "Bolton," Great John muttered, ill at ease. Roose inclined his head. "Lord Umber, your grace." To Robb he added, "May I?" Robb gestured toward the map table. "We were speaking of the phrase. A tiresome subject, to be sure." Bolton placed a slender hand on the silver discs. "With Walder's late indignation, the matter of your marriage remains much in question. Aye, the old man will take Manderley's coin once enough sweet promises are whispered, but coin alone cannot mend pride, nor can it revive." He paused, eyes flicking toward a folded corner of the parchment where the sigil of Jane Westerling's house had once been pinned. "Other concerns." Robb's stare hardened. "Lady Talisa is my queen. The phrase will accept that or see my banners at their gate." Bolton's lips twitched, the faintest echo of a smile, more chilling than Umber's bawdiest grin. "Of course, your grace, yet weddings, like wars, require terms. Best we agree upon them before winter grows blacker." Great John Umber stepped forward, chest swelling. "Aye, and before the Dreadfort's men start flaying terms from living skins, eh?" Bolton's gaze drifted, unbothered. "Bold words, Lord Umber. Boldness without calculation is a blade with no hilt. Still cuts clean through enemies, through friends as well." Robb raised a hand. "Enough." The cold in his voice was older than his years. "Roose, will you sup with me? We can discuss Frye terms in detail." Bolton's nod was graceful as falling snow. "As my king commands." That night the king's pavilion hummed with the clink of cups and low, deliberate voices. Roose Bolton sipped watered wine so pale it might have been the runoff of melting ice. He spoke little, listening as Caitlin set out advantages of Fry alliances and as Meege Mormont rasped of debts paid in blood. But Robb watched his silent moments. The tilt of the Lord of the Dreadfort's head whenever a courier arrived. The way Bolton's fingers tapped once on his cup when Robert Glover mentioned the garrison left behind at the Twins to reassure Lord Walder. After the others departed, Bolton lingered, bowing politely at the threshold. "A word, if it please your grace, private." Caitlin bristled, but Robb nodded. When she had gone, he gestured to the iron-bound chest beneath his cot. It snapped open on greased hinges, revealing a scattering of documents sealed with dire wolf wax. Robb tossed one across the table. Bolton broke the seal. His eyes flicked down the parchment, then up again. "A dismissal of charges against my bastard, Ramsay Snow." "You mean to pardon him?" "Not pardon," Robb said. "Exchange." There was a soft moment of nothing. No sound but the hush of the night wind outside. "In exchange for what, your grace?" "Your loyalty." Robb set both palms upon the table. "Unquestioned. From this hour to the hour my crown is dust. You will send your levies to reinforce the garrison at Moat Cailin. You will put your ravens and your coin to finding the movements of Ser Jaime Lannister. And you will hold no council with men sworn to House Fry unless I stand beside you." Bolton's face did not shift, yet something colder seemed to seep into the tent. A king who doubts his liege lords is half defeated. A king who trusts serpents ends on their fangs. A slow smile pricked Bolton's mouth. "Serpents? A flayed man is not a viper, your grace. I prefer subtlety to poison." Robb felt gray wind stir, the great wolf rising silently to his feet behind him. "Call it what you like. Will you swear?" Bolton studied the parchment once more, folded it, and slid it back across the table. "I will consider the terms." "By dawn," Robb said. "Else the bastard of Bolton's crimes are laid before the northern lords." Bolton's eyes gleamed. "The North remembers many crimes, my king, some older than your own father. It may yet remember them all." He bowed and drifted out into the snow. Gray wind bared his teeth at the parting of the flaps, hackles lifting as though at some scent none but a wolf could parse. Sleep did not come to the young wolf that night. He walked the pickets, cloak pulled tight, listening to the breath of thousands of men made one by winter's hush. In the distance torches danced where the Manderley column trudged northward, and he found himself praying, to the old gods, to any god, that those lights would not go out. When he returned to his pavilion before dawn, a thing awaited him. A bundle of vellum left atop the map table, tied in blue ribbon. The wax seal bore the flayed man of House Bolton. Robb sliced it open and read, "Your Grace, I ride for the Twins at once to secure the path. In matters of Walder Fry, haste is the only courtesy he understands. I take with me 20 horse, sufficient escort to discourage bandits but not to alarm our host. Expect my ravens at every mile. Your servant, Roose Bolton." Robb crushed the parchment. Bolton moved too quickly, so quickly he must have prepared before their council. The bastard pardon had not swayed him. If anything, it had spurred him to action, like a viper harried from its nest. By midday the Bolton horse were gone, their hoofprints filling with gray slush. Caitlin tried to soothe her son. "Roose is cunning, aye, but he is northern still. He will not break faith while the lords watch." Yet Robb's misgivings did not relent. That night, gray wind prowled the camp's edge, refusing meat, muzzle lifted to a scent no other creature felt. It was Ser Brynden Tully who brought proof. 3 days later he rode in at a gallop, his cloak soaked scarlet with someone else's blood. "Your Grace," the blackfish rasped, and thrust a scrap of cloth into Robb's hands. It was Fry Gray and Funmarsh Green, torn from the livery of scouts who rode ahead of Roose Bolton. "Found them gutted by the King's Road, crossbow bolts in the back." Robb frowned. "Bandits." Bolton's men used flanged heads. The wounded match. Caitlin drew a breath sharp as broken river ice. "There are other crossbows." "True," Ser Brynden agreed. "Yet these bolts bore pitch, would have lit bright had they struck torches. That's a Dreadfort trick, oil. then pitch to mask the smell. He fixed Robb with black, uncompromising eyes. Roose rides for Walder Frey, aye, but not as envoy. The council that night was small. Robb, Caitlin, the Blackfish, Great John Umber, Small John Umber, Galbart Glover, Meege Mormont, and Edmure Tully, pale from recent wounds. They met in the deep hours when the camp lay silent, save for the distant cough of tired sentries. Great John wanted Bolton's head on a spike. Meege Mormont wanted Bolton's flayed. Edmure fretted they might push Walder Frey into open arms of the Lannisters. Caitlin prayed they might reach the twins before betrayal bloomed. Robb listened until their urgings tangled like thorn vines. At last he spoke, his voice hoarse. "We march on the twins at first light. We ride hard, no baggage, no banners. Umber, Mormont, Glover form the vanguard. Brinden scouts ahead. If Bolton has betrayed us, we cut him from Walder's Hall before he finishes his cup." The plan was reckless, desperate, and the only road left. The North could ill afford to lose face at Walder Frey's bridge. If Bolton's whispers had turned the old lord, they must be drowned in steel. Robb slept an hour that night, dreamless except for distant howling. When dawn crept pale, the camp was already undone. Tents struck, men scrambling into frost-stiff saddles. Robb rode at the column's heart, gray wind loping beside his destrier, every sense strung taut as a drawn bow. Snow fell heavier as they pressed west, thick fat flakes that muffled hoofbeats. By afternoon the sky gaped white, horizonless. Even the trident seemed vanished beneath a shroud. Yet scouts returned with word of fresh tracks. Bolton's guard, riding hard yet unburdened, bound unmistakably for the twins. That evening they found bodies hanging from a beach beside the road. 3 Frey outriders, throats slit, boots stripped. Small John Umber cursed loud and long. "Bolton's work," he vowed. Robb ordered the corpses cut down and buried, though the ground was hard as iron. At the graveside Caitlin saw her son's hands tremble. "Robb, you need rest." "After." He turned away, face ashen in the snowlight. "After Bolton answers." They reached the twins under a sky gone bruised violet. Torches flickered across the bridge, casting orange bars on the dark rushing river. But the gates were shut, the portcullis lowered, and no horn sounded to welcome the King of the North. Ser Brinden's riders returned with grim tidings. Roose Bolton's party had entered at dawn and been feasted in the great hall. Ravens had flown at sunset toward the south. Great John Umber thumped a mailed fist on his saddle pommel. "Open your gates, ye prickly old goat," he roared across the water. His voice echoed, but no answer came, only wind and river splash. Caitlin felt dread coil, colder than the snow melting in her hair. "They mean to starve us at the bridge." Robb's cheeks were mottled crimson from the ride, but his eyes were bright, fever-sharp. "No, they mean something else." He dismounted, pulled off his gloves, and walked alone to the riverbank. Gray wind padded after him, the great wolf's hackles bristling. Robb stared up at the cold stone towers, massive, familiar, yet somehow alien now that their gates were barred. Between those towers, he had once dreamed of safe passage home, a promise paid in love. The snow ceased, as though the world were holding its breath. Then the portcullis creaked upward. A single rider emerged, bannerless, face hidden behind a hood rimmed in frost. He reined in midway across the bridge and raised his voice. "King Robb Stark," he called. "Lord Walder bids you enter and feast. He names you son once more." Robb's laughter startled even his own men, a short, harsh bark. "Tell the Lord of the Crossing that a son does not bar the gate against a father's return. And tell Roose Bolton I would feast with him in hell before I break bread here." The rider shifted uneasily. "Lord Bolton swears faithful service, your grace. He awaits to bend the knee." At that Meege Mormont spat into the snow. He'd bend it, aye, to slide a knife twixt ribs, but Robb's voice held steady. "If Roose Bolton is true, he will ride out now and place himself in my custody. If he is false, he may hide behind Frey walls while they crumble about him." The rider bowed stiffly and turned. Gray Wind growled low. Halfway back, he looked over his shoulder. Though his hood shadowed the features, Robb thought he glimpsed a pale, unremarkable face, eyes empty as winter ponds. Then the rider vanished inside. The portcullis clanged. Night drew its cloak, swallowing torchlight. Fires burned on the north bank, and Robb's captains argued whether to storm the eastern tower by raft at dawn or build siege machines from the sparse river trees. Yet Robb brooded apart, watching the bridge. Somewhere beyond that stone, Bolton supped, perhaps speaking softly of young kings and old betrayals. Caitlin approached. She had donned a otter fur cloak against the chill, but her face was raw with wind. "Son," she said gently, "there is another way." Robb turned. "Parley." "Aye, with Lord Walder. He'll never trust me to pass his gate again."
"No."
"But he might trust a mother." Robb's jaw clenched. "Never. You go in there and they will hold you. I won't trade your life for mine." Caitlin placed a hand on his arm, fingers stiff with cold yet still warm to him. "I am not the captive here, Robb. You are, so long as those gates are shut. Bolton makes his play tonight or not at all. Let me see what cards he holds." Robb looked away at the dark water below. Snow had begun again, soft white motes swirling between torch sparks. He remembered childhood nights in Winterfell, the world quiet except for wolves and wind, and his mother singing low songs in the godswood. Love could be a cage as surely as iron, but here beyond the twins' love was the only shield he had. "Very well," he whispered, "but you go with guards, Blackfish, Meege Mormont, 20 men. At the first hint of treachery you ride back or burn the tower roof." Caitlin squeezed his arm. "First hint," she promised. In the hush before dawn she crossed the bridge. She wore no sigil but the direwolf, yet her stride was that of a Tully lady entering the halls of lesser men. The portcullis groaned and swallowed her. Robb watched until the gates clanged shut once more, and an ache as old as fear hollowed his chest. Hours passed. Snow deepened, muffling the camp, burying the fire pits in white mounds that smoked softly. Gray Wind prowled and whined, nose lifting to scents carried on unseen currents. At mid-morn, a black raven burst from a tower slit, wheeling into the ashen sky. Robb tracked it until it vanished eastward. Ser Brynden came to stand beside him. No message tied. Robb grunted, though uncertainty gnawed. Ravens could carry more than parchment. Sometimes they bore tidings in the absence of notes, tidings too urgent to pen. He gripped the hilt of his long sword, steel cold even through glove leather. "If the raven reaches Harrenhal, Bolton's bastard knows our strength and our aim, and the Lannisters soon after. We might still take the tower," Brynden said. "Bolton would slit my mother's throat the instant our first ladder rose." The Blackfish's mouth tightened. "Then we wait." But not long. The second raven flew at dusk, the third at moonrise. Robb felt patience fray like old rope. Neither Caitlin nor Brynden's escort returned. The silence of the twins was total, a keep holding its breath. On the third night, Gray Wind erupted in snarls, eyes blazing with green-gold fury. He lunged toward the bridgehead, teeth bared. Men scrambled to seize him, but he shook them off, hackles high, every hair alight with menace aimed at the looming towers. Robb's own heart pounded with sudden wild certainty. Something inside had broken, a compact older than words. He strode to the edge of camp. "Fetch torches," he ordered. "All of them." Great John Umber stared. "Torches? In this wind?" "The wind is our friend," Robb said, voice shaking not with fear but with rage. "We light the bridge supports. Stone cracks when hot meets cold." Umber hesitated only a heartbeat before bellowing for kindling. Men hauled wagon loads of pitch-soaked firewood, stacking beneath the wooden spans that braced the stone arches. Snow hissed on red-orange flames. Sparks flew into the starless dark. The fry gates remained shut, yet somewhere behind them horns sounded thin, panicked, as though a feast had turned to chaos. Robb drew steel. The king's voice rang across river and rampart. "Roose Bolton, your treason burns tonight." Come forth and meet the king you betrayed. No answer but the crack and roar of rising fire. Flames licked up carved pilasters, turning snow to steam. Ash veiled the bridgehead. The river began to glow with scattered embers swirling downstream. Then a flutter of pale cloth. A form staggered through the gatehouse haze. Caitlin, hair unbound, face streaked with soot. She clutched a dagger slick with fresh blood. Behind her trudged Blackfish Brinden, limping, blade red to the hilt. They half-dragged a third figure, Roose Bolton, armor dark with his own gore, a crossbow quarrel protruding from beneath his wishbone collar. Bolton's eyes were wide, as though the world had failed some unspoken promise. Blood bubbled at his lips. He sagged, but Caitlin's grip held him upright like a prisoner displayed. Robb felt the world narrow to a point of white-hot clarity. Crossing the burning span, he seized Bolton by the gorget and drew him close. The Lord of the Dreadfort managed a faint smile, red with ruin. "I misliked bows at feasts," Bolton whispered. "Yet a quarrel finds the heart all the same." Robb's sword flashed. Roose Bolton's head thumped upon the stones and rolled toward the flames. A roar rose from the Northmen. Rage, triumph, grief woven together. Great John Umber hewed the chains of the portcullis with an axe. Meege Mormont's daughters hauled the gates wide. Fry men inside threw down arms, stumbling from tables set for slaughter. The bridge burned bright, embers swirling skyward like fireflies fleeing winter. But above the roar of flame, Robb heard a softer sound. His mother's breathing ragged, the blackfish coughing blood, the distant cry of a dying raven. And beneath it all, like drums in a cavern, the thunder of war yet unmet. For the Red Wedding had been averted, yet wars do not end because a single dagger finds its mark. They only change their shape. Robb Stark wiped his blade on Bolton's cloak and looked west, where the sunset smeared the clouds Tywin Lannister crimson. Snow fell anew, each flake a ghost drifting down to settle on the corpse of treachery. But treachery breeds seeds in hidden soil, and somewhere in those shad. Ramsay Snow would soon learn his father was dead. That night the young wolf scarcely slept, for though the twins were his again, the future had taken on a new and terrible hue, sharp as broken ice beneath a red dawn. Snow lay thick on the bridge by the time the last embers died, a crust of gray-white ash knitted into the winter blanket so that each footfall snapped like brittle bone beneath a heel. The charred skeleton of the eastern span still smoldered, but the river's greedy ice water had swallowed most of the beamwork, and the smoke spiraled sluggishly upward to mix with the heavier flurries drifting out of a leaden sky. Dawn never truly came that morning. A bruised pearl light seeped in from the east, a dull glow that turned all the banners and shields and blood-spattered mail into one colorless tableau. Men as shadows, horses as shapes, the world as if half erased. Robb Stark stood upon the parapet of the northern tower, gloved hands braced against stone mantlings that radiated yesterday's heat. Below, stable hands and spearmen slogged through slush to clear bodies. Fry men, mostly, though a handful of his own had fallen when a barricade collapsed on them amid the panic. He watched until his eyelashes frosted and his knuckles numbed, and even then he did not turn away. Somewhere behind him the courtiers whispered that the young wolf no longer felt the cold, that his blood ran different after so many nights sleeping beside a dire wolf and dreaming of their shared hunts. Yet Robb felt everything, felt it too sharply. The heavy ache in shoulders that had borne grief for too long, the throb of a healing sword arm, the stinging cut on his chin where a chipped stone had flown up when the portcullis chains snapped. He felt the cold most of all. Cold like the vacant bed where Talisa had lain, the cold horror of what nearly befell them inside this castle, and the deeper cold that settled in a king's heart when blood had been spilled by his command. Gray wind padded along the wall walk, muzzle low, for spiked with half-melted snow. He whined, and Robb reached to scratch behind the ear, feeling the tremor of the wolf's unease. The twins were theirs for the moment, yet the dire wolf's hackles rose at every creak, every scent of iron, as though the stones still whispered mischief in the dark. If Roose Bolton's shade lingered, gray wind would sooner devour than howl. Boots ground lightly on wet stone behind him. Robb did not need to glance back. The blackfish's limp preceded him, 3 slow steps, 1 quick, the pace of an old wound that flared in ankle or knee. Ser Brynden halted at Robb's side and folded his arms, breath fogging. "Lord Walder has asked audience again," he said, voice rough. The fight inside the great hall had left his lungs rattling, and each word sounded dredged from a riverbed. "Sends word he will bend the knee to maintain the peace." Peace. The word cracked. Robb finally turned, eyes burning. He strung musicians from the gallery rafters by their own fiddle strings. Peace. He fed salt beef to dogs while his guests starved. Peace. And would sooner do worse if given the chance. Aye. The blackfish watched a pair of umber men heave a singed crossbeam over the wall to splash into the river. "But so long as he remains lord of this crossing, we will taste his foulness at every meal. Better we drink the poison where we can watch the cup." Robb said nothing. He had tasted poison enough. The bitter gall of discovering that Bolton had conspired to turn the supper tables into slaughter benches, that the phrase, coaxed by promises of southern favor, had hoarded crossbows in the kitchens, that minstrels were hired not to sing but to count the arrow volleys on hidden drums. Only 2 things had unraveled the web: Bolton's haste to dispatch ravens southward, and Caitlyn's sudden ferocity when she glimpsed a fry boy bring a second cask of Dornish red to the high dais, too potent for a winter feast when watered ale would do. She had followed the boy, learned where Bolton's sworn blades stowed shields and sowlets in barrels of barley, and when the first doors barred shut, she slit her captor's throat with his own fruit knife so that his blood painted the sweetmeats red. The rest was a blur, half fire, half iron. Brynden cleared his throat. "Lord Walder will keep his head bowed so long as we hold his grandsons as surety, and so long as he believes Tywin's gold can't reach him. But the instant our backs turn for home, we leave a garrison," Robb said. 50 men at least in each tower, 100 across the bridge foot. "Whoever draws duty will curse me, but better that than a knife in the ribs at a hearthfire months hence." Brynden glanced sideways, a small crooked grin. "The great John will volunteer gladly, says he likes fry maidens. All of them at once if that be possible." Robb's lips twitched though the smile died quick. He watched a flock of crows settle on the opposite bank, picking at a mound of corpses. They looked like scraps of midnight against the snow. "Tell Lord Walder I will grant audience at noon, but only if he comes alone, without arms and without song. The sight of his minstrels turns my stomach." Brynden bowed and limped off. Robb remained to watch the river swallow smoke, gray swirls on black water. Noon. Walder Frye would come, because he had no card but obedience left. But one old man's obeisance could not mend the fissure that had opened. It ran too deep, beneath trade alliances and defensive pacts, undermining a bridge of trust that had taken 3 centuries to mortar. He would need new mortar, oaths in iron, hostages, perhaps a fresh alliance south or east. He would need an answer to Tywin Lannister's ravens, for word of Bolton's death would reach King's Landing on wings swift as dread. In the gilded halls of the Red Keep they would call Robb Savage, Oathbreaker, Butcher Boy. A Lannister host might march north before the thaw if fortune favored them. The wind cut sharper. Robb flexed fingers stiff in fur-lined gloves and thought of Talisa again. How she had once laughed that northerners would garb the very moon in fur if they could reach it. Her laughter had been warm enough to melt nights like this. But in its place now he felt only a hollow bird's nest that the sun never reached. Voices echoed up the stairway: Galbart Glover, Meege Mormont, Edmure Tully. Council time. Robb straightened, gave Grey Wind a final pat, and descended into the tower. The great hall of the twins lingered like a half-extinguished torch. Pillars blistered with soot, rushes soaked in spilled wine, tables overturned, roast mutton rotting where it had rolled beneath benches. Fires hissed in scarred hearths, but the warmth could not scrub away the stench of fear that clung to lintels and rafters. Robb's council gathered at the dais, a crescent of battered lords ringed by torches that cast their faces into hollows of gold and black. Edmure Tully leaned against a table, his newly splinted arm wrapped tight. "Ravens from Seaguard, my king," he said as Robb approached. The Lannisters send envoys to treat with Lord Jason Mallister. They speak of ransom for prisoners taken at White River. His jaw clenched. Lady Rosalind Fry dabbed at the bruises on his cheek where a guard had struck him in the hall. Being a groom had not spared him a beating. Envoys now, Galbart Glover growled. Armies next. When Tywin learns the crossing is lost, he'll ride like a burning stag to outrun the snows. Meage Mormont agreed, one eye swelling purple from a mace haft. House Lannister will not let autumn slip without redress. But the snows make fools of lions. Only if we keep the lion south of the neck, Small John Umber said. He'd stripped to a sleeveless jerkin despite the chill, sweat steaming off broad shoulders. My father swears Moat Cailin holds 300 under Howland Reed, but the Crannogmen cannot bar the causeway if the King's Road stays clear. We need more stones on that way. We need more swords, Edmure interjected. Bolton's betrayal leaves a wound in our line. The Dreadfort levies will not follow us once they learn their lord is dead. They will, Robb said, voice taut. They must. I offered pardon for loyalty. If they refuse, they stand traitor. Yet he feared what face loyalty might wear in a land where Ramsay Snow styled himself the new lord of the Dreadfort. The bastard was said to skin men for pleasure, and now he would have pretext to flay any who remained true to Winterfell. Even a lord's decree could not mend that. Catelyn spoke at last. She sat beside the hearth, arms wrapped around shoulders still sore from the struggle. Her hair had come undone, a wild auburn curtain streaked with streaks of soot. Yet her eyes were bright and steady. We have no true measure of the Dreadfort's temper, she said. Bolton raised banners early in your cause. Some in his retinue remained loyal to the king, not the lord. They'll wait to see which side the wind favors. Robb nodded slowly. We give them that wind, then. He unrolled a fresh parchment across the board, ink barely dry. Galbart, Meage, you ride north with copies of this proclamation. It grants amnesty to any Bolton man who bends the knee and bears witness against Ramsay Snow for the crimes of Alys Karstark's daughter, for the killing of Lady Hornwood, and for every skinned man hung from walls since. He tapped the page. And it names Howland Reed acting warden of the upper neck until I return. His Crannogmen know every trick of that bog. With him, the causeway may hold. The neck's a quagmire, the Blackfish said. But if Tywin sends his vanguard by sea, he could land at White Harbor. Lord Wyman closes his gates to lions, Edmure objected. Gates, aye, but the harbor's a wide mouth to choke. Robb addressed that with a nod. I'll send ravens to Lord Wyman. Every warship anchored upriver must be scuttled if the Lannister sails appear. Manderley merchants may curse me, but better they lose silver than lose their heads. Galbart smirked thinly. Some might call it treason to sink good coin. Pay them when peace comes. Robb rolled up the parchment. Wyman still dreams of nights at Tourney. Offer him Winterfell's thanks, and seat at my council when we ride to feast in King's Landing. A murmur went up, not of assent or dissent, but of longing. The distant hope of banners flying golden wolf above Maegor's holdfast, of Northmen walking marbled corridors where lions once prowled. Hope could lift men where orders alone could not. See it done, Robb said. We leave ravens at every rookery from the Twins to Moat Cailin. The realm must know the truth of Bolton's treachery before Lannister quills scratch their lies. Truth travels slower than rumor, Catelyn warned. Then we give rumor wings. Robb's eyes flashed. Let them say Roose Bolton fell championing my right, if that suits their taste. Let them say we spared every fry babe in cradle, though some here may curse me for it. His gaze found Meage Mormont. The she-bear regarded him, lips pressed thin but silent. I will not slaughter children for their grandsire's crimes. Small John Umber shifted. But you'll hold them hostage. I, Robb said. Hold them. Teach them. Send them home when they've learned the worth of a sworn word. The great John would have roared laughter at such talk, but he was 6 towers away berating fryguards for stale ale. In his absence, the council broke into smaller knots. Mormont's conferring with Glovers on supply wagons, Edmure whispering to Rosalind of leaving soon for Riverrun, the blackfish poring over a map of the riverlands. Robb listened, offered nods, corrections. Yet part of him lingered on the parapet still, watching the smoke swirl over dark waters and wondering how quickly snow could become ash again when men's hearts burned. Lord Walder Frye arrived at noon as commanded, alone save for 2 pages who carried his chair and a fleece blanket, for the hall's fires did not suit his brittle bones. He shuffled under the archway hunched like a vulture, eyes darting at every banner stripped of its fringe, every new guard wearing the direwolf badge on borrowed surcoat. When he saw Roose Bolton's head impaled on an iron prong above the central hearth, his mouth worked silently, and Robb heard no pious prayer. Bolton's face had gone slack and waxen, lips parting to show gray teeth. Someone had sewn the eyelids shut with horsehair, a Dreadfort custom turned back on itself. A single high table remained upright. Robb sat at its center, gray wind at his feet. Edmure stood to his left, Caitlin slightly behind, and the blackfish to his right hand in lieu of a hand of the king. The other captains lined the walls, umbra silhouettes in torchlight, silent as carved saints. The hush weighed heavy. Lord Walder's slippered feet scuffed along reed mats strewn with broken lyres. He reached the foot of the dais and bowed. Not deeply, but enough that joints cracked in protest. "My king," he said at last, voice dry as parchment. "I am your faithful bannerman." "Are you?" Robb asked softly. "Ever, your grace." Walder wheezed and lowered himself into his chair without invitation, motioning the pages to draw the blanket over knees thin as chopsticks. "Age is a poor tutor in bending. Yet bend I do." He rapped knuckles on the armrest. "I make humble apology for misunderstandings. The flayed lord misled us all." Robb studied the old man's creased face, the watery blue eyes that flickered to every corner of the hall except the one where Bolton dripped. "Misled? Then you did not plan murder at supper, nor string nets across the feast to trap my soldiers in flame." Walder shrugged inside wool. "I furnished the hall for guests. If some planned mischief under my roof, I cannot be answerable for each scrap of conversation. I have many sons." A cough rattled him. "Some whelp perilous ambitions. I berate them, yet they scurry about. Rats will scratch at the pantry door when the cheese smells rich." "My lords," Robb said, raising his voice so all might hear, "Lord Walder Frye claims ignorance of the schemes that killed Northmen and riverlords in this hall 3 nights past. How say you?" A sullen mutter rose. None shouted assent. Walder's chin twitched. Robb let the silence draw, like a bowstring. Then Caitlin stepped forward. "Lord Walder, if your grandsons plotted, who commanded the archers hidden in the musician's loft? 70 crossbows do not appear by accident." "Old men forgetful," Walder rasped. "Crossbows, yes, I recall. A gift from King Joffrey to honor my daughter's nuptials to some cousin. I forget the name." Edmure flushed red.
"Sir Pervin Frey."
"My cousin by marriage now and thrice oathbreaker. A generous lad, if proud. Wanted quarrels on hand for a celebratory salute. Overzealous, I fear." Robb lifted a hand. "Enough." He stood. Gray wind rose too, silent. "Lord Walder, whether you conspired or stood idle, blood was spilled beneath your roof. The laws of guest right weigh heavy in every hall from White Harbor to Dorne. By rights I should strip the twins and scatter its stones in the river. Yet I will forbear, for the bridge stands upon my road home, and for the sake of those innocent within these walls." He paused. "But a price will be paid." Walder's lips trembled. "Name it, your grace, and if it lies in my power. Hostages. 10 of your grandsons, chosen by me, will ride north in my train and serve as pages at Winterfell until the realm is at peace. 10 granddaughters likewise will reside with the Manderleys at White Harbor, to be fostered as gentlewomen. In addition, the twins will remit half its tolls each year to feed the rebuilding of Winterfell and to relieve the northern smallfolk burnt by war. Finally, you will stand aside while Northmen garrison this castle. The wolf will share this den with the trout, until I name the day." Walder stared, mouth yawning like a rotten well. Pages flitted anxious glances. Minutes crawled. At last the old lord swallowed. I shall provide the children, the coins, and the quarters, he croaked. Will that satisfy your justice? It will begin to, Robb said. Keep faith henceforward, Lord Walder. Break it, and I will shorten you by a head for every son of yours that draws breath. Walder Frey's Adam's apple bobbed as though swallowing a stone. He muttered something lost beneath a cough, then heaved to his feet and shuffled away. The pages had to half-drag the chair behind him. Its legs left twin furrows in the sullied rushes like grave gashes. When the arch trembled shut behind him, the hall exhaled as one. Small John Umber spat. Meege Mormont rolled her shoulders as though shedding a weight. Edmure sank onto a bench, eyes red-rimmed. In the quiet, Caitlin looked at her son. Her boy who'd grown lean and grim and distant, who now wielded men's lives as if they were stones to lay a road. She saw the tremor in his clenched fist and stepped up to brush a lock of hair off his brow. You did not like it, she whispered. No, he answered, but I will sleep better knowing the twins are chained with wolf steel. Chains break, yet bonds taught in kindness may last longer. Robb almost smiled. Walder Frey has never met kindness without seeking loophole. But his grandchildren may learn. He let out a breath. I pray they do. Letters flew out from the twins on raven wings black as the river depths. Edicts to lords, appeals for grain, apologies to sceptered sisters slighted by rumor's coil. Glover men ferried crates of crossbow strings to replace burnt stocks. Umber smiths hammered nails to mend walkways split in flame. Day followed day, snow thickening until the outer yard became a pale bowl where children, Frey and Northmen alike, chased each other with pig bladder balls while stern sergeants raked ash from floodgates. Robb spent those days in saddle and study. He inspected each tower for secret passages, removed any trapdoors that led to murder holes, set guards by every cask of lamp oil and pitch. At night he bent over parchment with Maester Vyman, tracing war fronts like a weaver measuring cloth. The Lannister legions massed at Harrenhal under Ser Kevin. Reports claimed the king, or rather the boy who wore the crown, urged attack before frost hardened the rivers. Stannis Baratheon's fires burned still on Dragonstone. Yet the Stormlander Lord lacked ships and men for a fresh assault. Balon Greyjoy's krakens prowled the western coasts, though the Ironborn watched the seasons more thriftily than southern lords. Each day winter deepened postponed their raids. One night as Tor candles died, Caitlin brought bread and cheese. Robb had not eaten since dawn, though hunger felt distant. He unrolled a map of the neck, finger following the causeway from Moat Cailin to Barrowton. If Tywin marches by sea, he lands at Seaguard or Cape Kraken. If by river, he'll need to force the fords, but Walder's tolls will bite him. That might delay. Tywin does not count coin when iron buys more. Caitlin poured watered wine. He'll pay to cross if it wins the war. Robb sipped. We must break him before he crosses, or lock him north of the Trident until spring starves his wheat wagons. He rubbed eyes raw from smoke. I hate waiting. Then do not wait. Caitlin set the pitcher down, her voice softer. Send riders to Riverrun, to Seaguard, to Acorn Hall. Rally your uncles and aunts and all the small knights sworn to House Tully. They will harry Lannister supply lines. Let Tywin feel the bite of 1,000 small wolves. Robb considered. Father taught. A hound alone may run swift, but a pack outlasts storm and starve. We need a pack. He took quill to parchment and drafted orders, sealing each with wolf wax. Blackfish will command the reavers. No pitched battles, only fire and flight. We turn Tywin's road to ruin. They worked till dawn's first gray. As he sealed the last letter, Robb felt a tug at the hem of memory. His father's voice praising steady duty, his mother's lullabies floating over Winterfell's pools. If he lived to old age, he might forget the color of Bolton's blood on snow. Yet never this hush of shared resolve with the woman who had taught him to tie laces, to face truth without flinch. He reached and squeezed Caitlyn's hand. She squeezed back, and though grief still shadowed her eyes, something like pride glimmered there too. The moon waned, and with it the first rumors of Ramsay Snow's fury reached the twins. A pair of Crannogman scouts, pale beneath woad tattoos, trudged through the snowdrifts to kneel before Robb in the outer ward. They told of blood trees at the bar Rollins, of flayed corpses pinned to standing stones where old kings slept. Ramsay had proclaimed himself Lord of the Dreadfort and Winter's heir. Fearful title for a bastard whose father lay headless. He rallied broken men, reavers, poachers, Fry deserters swift to escape the twins before hostages were named. They marched east, ransacking villages for food, nailing ravens to signposts as warnings. Every tale of cruelty hardened Robb's jaw. Caitlin urged caution. Set guards thrice thick round the children. We hold Fry babes and Bolton allies will covet them. Robb complied and doubled the night watch, but his heart beat war drums. Each morning he walked the battlements scanning skies for ravens, praying not for news but for silence. For each blank day to mean Ramsay had not yet broken Moat Cailin or burned White Harbor. Yet war seldom honors prayers. 2 weeks after Fry's submission, a hooded rider arrived at dusk, stallion lathered scarlet with torchlight. He bore a sack. In the yard he fell to one knee, thrust bag outward. From Lord Ramsay Snow to his graceless brother of Winterfell, Robb descended with 5 guards. The man smelled of mud and fear. Robb grasped the sack's drawstring. Inside lay 10 rolled skins, parchment finely scraped and scrawled with ink so fresh it smeared beneath torchlight. But these scrolls were not parchment at all. They were fingers, the nails painted with soot, knuckles milky. Small John Umber cursed aloud. Edmure retched into snow. Robb counted 8 male, 2 female, infants' digits among them. A strip of hide pinned to the bundle read, "Return my father, return my bride, return the boy I will flay if you refuse." Robb's throat closed. "What bride?" he croaked. "The Lady Arya Stark," the messenger said. "Lord Ramsay wedded her before the weirwood at Winterfell. She is his by law." "Lies," Robb whispered. The thought of his sister, long missing, rumored fleeing toward the wall, now captive and wed to Bolton's spawn, pricked tears of rage behind his eyes. He crushed the strip in a gauntlet. "Where is she?" "By the Dreadfort hearth, waiting for her lord's loving hand," the rider stammered. "He swears, if you do not trade him safe passage and a seat at your side, he will send more. Flay this dog," Small John snarled, drawing his axe. "Hold," Robb commanded. He turned to the rider. "Tell your master the king of the north will give him passage to the wall." He leaned close, voice a hiss. "But only if he brings Lady Arya unharmed and kneels before her to beg pardon. If one hair upon her head is plucked, I will burn the Dreadfort stone by stone and salt the earth so nothing grows where his line once stood. Go, carry that message." The rider bolted, hair whipping. Snow swallowed him quick. Caitlin clasped Robb's arm. "Arya, my fierce little wolf, could she truly be prisoner?" "She is not wed," Robb said, though the words felt fragile. "No gods would vow binds a bastard's claim, yet law might bend where swords forced." He thought of Theon's letters, of boys burned in Winterfell's yard, of Bran and Rickon lost to smoke and rumor. Each memory rang like a black anvil. "I ride north." "Not alone," the Blackfish stated, no suggestion but decree. "We carve a corridor of spears to Winterfell, break Ramsay under hoof and hammer." "But Tywin," Edmure's eyes were bleary. "If you march north with half our host, he will push to Riverrun." Robb faced him. "Tywin will meet the river's wrath first. The Blackfish will command the Riverlands in my stead." That drew a sharp look, but Brynden inclined head. "Lord Karstark's sons will ride with me. The Great John leads vanguard. Meage Mormont holds the twins with Glover archers." He turned, scanning faces shadowlit. "We march at first thaw. Until then we drill, we mend gear. We pray the gods seal our roads with ice so Ramsay cannot break further." Small John grinned wolfish. "Aye, let's give the bastard flaying enough to last 7 hells." Robb closed fingers around the symbol of his crown, the dire wolf brooch fastened at collar. "Pray first, Small John, for Arya, wherever she hides, in chains or in shadow. We ride to save her, not to feed the snow with more dead."
Silencians vered, solem as agrave voo.
Then men knelt, each touching sword to frostbitten stone. Robb's breath steamed in rising moonlight, and within its pale plume he glimpsed the ghost of his father's stern nod. He would ride, as Eddard would ride, because honor left no softer choice. 7 days later the air warmed just enough to drip eaves, to crack ice sheaths off river reeds. The king's host assembled in the courtyard. 5,000 foot, 3,000 horse, lean from winter rations yet eager for motion. The great John bellowed over them, stripes of blue war paint on cheeks. The drummers thudded bearskins. Banners flapped heavy, the stark direwolf foremost among them, freshly stitched with crimson streaks across its maw in memory of Bolton's fall. Robb hugged his mother in the shadow of the gatehouse. She smelled of cedar soap and wool grease, and when she pressed a kiss to his cheek, the warmth cut deeper than a blade. "Bring her home," Caitlin murmured, voice shaking. "I will," Robb promised. He mounted his gray stallion. Gray wind leapt to flank, eyes pale fire. Trumpets sounded. The gates groaned wide. Robb raised his sword, sunlight glinting along its edge as droplets flew from the blade like sparks. He pointed north. The column moved with crunch of hooves and rattle of armor, a living serpent winding away from the twins. Men shouted farewells to tower lurkers, to fry maids who wept or jeered. As they crossed the ruined span now rebuilt with fresh timber, Robb glanced back once. On the parapet, Caitlin stood small but unbowed. Behind her Bolton's head still watched, stitched eyes blind to what storms approached. North they rode, pace swift, cutting across frozen fields where hares darted and foxes loitered for scraps. Each night they camped beneath pines, fires guttering low to mask their glow. Ravens dogged the host, croaking overhead to spy out secrets, but umber bowmen loosed arrows skyward until bodies thumped snow. They met few folk, some crofters fleeing west, a ragged band of sellswords who offered service for bread, 2 Dreadfort outriders who died before dawn spilled. On the 5th day hail battered tents like slingstones. Robb studied maps until the canvas dripped, marking where the weeping water cut east. Ramsay's trail, though erratic, nudged always toward the village of Torrens Square, once lorded by Ser Roderick Castle in his father's name. If the bastard aimed to secure grain stores there, he might reach it within a fortnight. Robb shaved days by turning the host across deer paths and frozen creeks, risking wheels and potholes to steal miles. They reached the bogland verge of the neck as winter reached deeper into bone. Here reeds rose tall as men, water black under scum. Mists coiled at sunrise, ghostly. Howland Reed's crannig sentinels greeted them with curt bows, leading the king across hidden plank bridges where one wrong step sank a man to the chin. At Greywater Watch, half hall, half island, Howland awaited, wiry and gray, wearing a hauberk of overlapping turtle shells. Ramsay passes east of here with near 800. Mixed rabble, he reported. We bleed him daily, crannig darts at dawn, nets at dusk. He's lost a third already to leeches and fear, but the bastard's cunning and cruel. He kills his own laggards to quiet fear, then cooks them to feed the rest. Robb's stomach clenched. Lady Arya? Howland shook head. No girl matching her likeness, but we glimpse a captive in wolfskin cloak, face shrouded. Might be the prey he boasts of. He frowned. Could also be some poor nameless wretch he'll mask to trick you. Robb's chest tightened. We march tonight. Guide us. So the march quickened into a pursuit. Crannigmen led by moonlight, walkway to walkway, as King's men followed like shadows drawn by the silver lantern of vengeance. Ramsay's fires blazed ahead, orange in marsh fog, but each morning they flickered farther, as though the bastard sensed jaws closing. On the 8th night Robb called council beneath a drowned willow. Frogs croaked, insects thrummed. Great John sliced a hake open, sprinkling salt. Ser Wendell Manderley gnawed jerky. Howland set reed map on a flat stone. Tomorrow, he said, Ramsay must cross the fever water, only ford for leagues. We can flank. My spear's here, Umber horse here, your main force here. He jabbed, cutting retreat. If he breaks north, the bog swallows him. If he holds ford, we trap between bank and river. Robb nodded. We strike at dawn. Gray wind lifted nose, growling low. Robb stilled. The others followed suit. At first only the wind rustled reeds, but then came a faint splash beyond the willows. 1, 2, a stumble. Shadows rose among ferns. Howland hissed signal. Reed men melted into dark, Notch's arrows. A figure lurched into firelight, girl or woman, hair matted with mud, face masked by a hood sewn from raw wolf fur. Her wrists were bound with rope trailing behind like a snake's tail. She staggered, collapsed to knees. Gray wind snarled yet did not spring. Robb strode forward, sword half drawn. The woman cowered as he knelt. "I won't harm you," he murmured. "I'm Robb." She flinched at the name. Robb saw welts on her wrists, blood crusted at lip. He lifted the hood. Brown tangled locks, gaunt cheeks, eyes too large for a starved face. Yet not Arya's gray. This girl's eyes were hazel-flecked green. He shook head. She whispered, "I'm Lady Arya." The voice was hoarse, rehearsed as if taught. "Ramsay's bride." Robb felt a chill. "Who are you really?" "T the wolf's sister," she stammered. "Spare me." Howland Reed crouched, torchlight glinting on his narrow eyes. "This is a maid of Barrow Hall by look," he said softly. "One of Lady Dustin's kin, mayhap." Ramsay uses masks. Tears streaked muddy cheeks. "He made me wear it. Said I would fool the young king long enough." She sobbed. "He gave me this." She stretched a trembling hand to reveal a ring, iron, wrought as two snarling dogs entwined. Ramsay's sigil.
Robb's fists clenched till nails beat keen.
He gestured to Glover guards. "Cut her bonds. Feed her. Keep her warm." Then he straightened, meeting his captain's eyes. "Ramsay expects us at the ford, expecting to lure me close with false bride. We cannot dance to his pipe." Great John grunted. "Yet we've ridden hard. Let the bastard wait. Gut him where he stands. Or let his own fears gut him," Howland suggested. He traced a winding line south of the ford. "There is an older causeway, sunk but passable to light feet. We march Crannog's scouts through night, strike his camp from the reeds while he watches ford for banners. Deny him the stage he prepared." "Good." Robb looked toward the kidnapped girl nestled now in coats by the fire, attendants pressing tin cup to her lips. "And we keep her safe. She will know Winterfell's hearth once more, no matter whose daughter she is." "Mercy," Small John snorted. "Justice." Robb met his stare. "We show Ramsay what a Stark's promise means. And when he lies flayed by his own folly, the North will remember who kept faith." Dawn glimmered pale over marsh mist when the host formed ranks. Crannogmen slipping into high water with spears and oilskin. Umber horse archers checking bowstrings. Manderly foot stamping chill from toes. Robb donned dark leather over mail, tide cloak pinned by direwolf brooch. Gray wind brushed his thigh, eyes bright. They moved silent as winter owls, step by step along hidden causeway where dead leaves floated lip-deep. Frogs fell quiet before them. Only the hiss of marsh gas and distant caw of ibis broke hush. Hours crawled until the eastern sky blushed rose. Then Howland raised a reed whistle. Camp ahead. Through cattails they glimpsed tents. Ragged, patchworked, skulls staked along perimeter. Fires burned low, ringed by hunched figures gnawing charred meat. Flayed skins fluttered like sailcloth from poles. Robb tasted bile. Signal arrows streaked skyward, green fletch, Crannog call. A cry went up in camp. Horns blared. Ramsay's men scrambled for arms. But wolves were already among them. Umber riders crashed from Reedbank, axes hewing. Reed men loosed poison darts. Glover shields locked in wedge thrust. Robb rode at spearhead, gray wind bounding ahead to hamstring a pikeman. The wolf's jaws ripped throat, churned snow with blood. Screams clove dawn. Ramsay's ranks buckled. The bastard himself emerged on a black horse, eyes blazing fever blue, a cloak stitched from faces fluttering behind. He spurred straight at Robb, a frenzy of axe swings carving air. Robb parried, blade ringing, felt shock run arm to shoulder. They wheeled, kicked up sludge. Ramsay laughed high, a dog's bark. "Sister for wolf, king for flayer," he shouted, and flicked wrist. 3 throwing knives whistled. 2 struck Robb's shield. The 3rd grazed cheek hot. Robb answered with steel. Swing, feint, reverse, ice water splashed. Ramsay ducked, snarled, sliced at Robb's knee. Male links burst, pain flared, but Robb turned the blow aside and rammed pommel into Ramsay's temple. The bastard reeled. Gray wind leapt, fangs sinking into the horse's throat. The stallion screamed, toppled. Ramsay fell under it up to waist in mud. He writhed, cursed, tried to rise, but Robb swung down. The sword point kissed exposed throat. "Yield," Robb rasped. Ramsay grinned crimson. "Flay me then," he panted. "Wear my skin to war. I pass on such cloaks." Robb drove blade through collarbone. Ramsay's laughter died in a wet gurgle. Battle raged still, dying men, fallen standards. But leaderless, the rabble shattered. By high sun silence returned, broken only by moans of wounded and the soft splash of marsh water reclaiming blood. Robb stood over Ramsay's corpse, breath steam in sunlight, cheek weeping red. Great John approached, wiping axe. "Won't string him up? Flay the flayer." Robb shook head. "Let water take him. Marshes remember every cruelty. That is punishment enough." So they rolled the bastard into a peat pool. Bubbles rose once, then the bog closed, unmarked save for crimson swirl. Days later, the king's host camped on drier slope beneath the ruins of an immune tower. Snow returned, fat flakes like feathers. Robb sat before a low fire, bandage fresh on cheek, reading letters fetched from ravens now that riders could catch them. One bore Manderley seal. Wyman pledged to scuttle harbor ships at first sight of lion sails. He also enclosed a sweetmeat recipe to nourish the northern spirit. Robb smiled weary. Another letter from Riverrun. Ser Brynden had harried Lannister wagons, burning fodder stores near Pink Maiden. Tywin stiffened guard but slowed march. Edmure reported raising levy of 3,000 to join the Blackfish soon. Hope flickered. Catelyn sat opposite whittling fresh arrow shafts. The girl rescued, the false Arya, slept behind them, cheeks no longer gaunt. Her name was Jane Poole. She'd confessed, childhood friend to Sansa and Arya. Ramsay had forced her into the role, beating names into her until they blurred. Now she whispered true songs again at dusk. Each night Robb felt weight ease a hair to hear some fragment of Winterfell rhyme in her shy voice. He finished the letters, fed parchment ends to flames. Gray wind curled at his boots. The wind smelled of pine and distant sea. The sky's edge cleared to west where dying sunlight spilled copper. Robb looked northward. Home lay there, a few weeks' ride, Winterfell still stone and ash but standing, they said, with weeds softening the scars. "We will rebuild," he murmured. Catelyn glanced up. "Stone and heart both." "Aye, and when the snows melt, when the rivers thaw, we ride south again, mother. Ride with all the north at our back." He exhaled long. "But first, I want to see the godswood. Lay my head where Bran once climbed." Voice broke. "Where father's voice lingers." Catelyn rested hand atop his. "We shall, and the old gods will hear our thanks." Above them, the first star pierced clouds, cold white, unwavering. Somewhere drummers beat slow cadence as men ate salted pork, as healers stitched flesh, as children taken from the twins laughed by new fires. War was not over. Tywin's shadow still glided across plains. Fry grudges burned. Iron men raided coves. Yet tonight the king of the north sat by embers, blood-washed sword at side. Mother across from him, a wolf sleeping safe, a rescued girl dreaming of home. In that small stillness, hope greater than banners unfurled. The hope of a realm that might yet remember honor, that might stitch torn cloaks into new coats strong enough for winter. Snow fell lighter, then ceased. The night opened wide, deep, full of unseen wings. Robb closed eyes, breathed the scent of pine and ash and victory won without cruelty. When he opened them again, the flames had danced lower, and in their glow he thought he glimpsed, just beyond the camp, the faint outline of 2 direwolves, one great and gray, one small and white, standing sentinel at the edge of darkness, watching, waiting, guarding the road ahead until dawn raised its sword of light.